give you an idea of what we're thinking about, So you're sitting in the office and obviously real anxious, but what is this guy thinking about? What's going through his mind that he's, as he's talking to me, as he's examining me, et cetera. And simply put, it's these sort of 5 questions: who, what, where, why, and how. All right, so let's sort of go through that. So who? Obviously, I'm the moment we walk in the door, and even beforehand, as I'm reading through the chart and figuring out what other things are going on, I look at the patient and say, well, who is this person? Who is this man or woman? And how are they doing? And how are they going to tolerate what I have, what I'm ultimately going to be thinking about planning? And that's the, sort of the what. So how is he or she doing? That's a thing we'll talk about briefly called performance status. What other medical things are going on? So, for example, a lot of our patients have been smokers. About 80 to 85% of our patients are either current or ex-smokers. As Tracy mentioned, there's up to 20% of patients have never smoked, and there's a whole nother discussion of what caused their cancer. But obviously, smoking, in addition to leading to lung cancer, leads to other stuff, including cardiovascular disease, heart disease, and lung disease like COPD or emphysema. Oftentimes, our patients are elderly, so the average age for lung cancer in this country is 70. So fully 50% of my patients more than 50% of our patients are Medicare age and older. And then, actually, if they're actively smoking, it does have an impact on how they'll tolerate therapy. And then sort of another sort of layer of trying to gather information is what kind of support do they have? And it ranges all the way from people who I can't fit their whole families into the exam room because they bring so many people with them, so it's such a great support, to people who are all on their own, and that there's different implications about what's going on. All right, so this is sort of the doctor term, if you will, the medical term I tossed out last slide, called performance status. And ECOG and Zubrod, don't worry about them. That's just the names that we use of it. It's Dr. Zubrod, and ECOG is a cooperative group for studying cancer that was established years ago. So basically, it ranges 0 to 4. And a patient who has an ECOG or a Zubrod performance status of 0 is basically fully functional, working full time. And often it's the patient that has sort of an asymptomatic nodule picked up on perhaps a chest X-ray or a CT scan. There's a fair number of patients that we get that they come through, they're having a knee surgery, and the anesthesiologist got a chest X-ray, and chest X-ray showed a nodule, and then that led to the CT scan, the PET scan, the biopsy, et cetera. But they have absolutely no symptoms. So that's the ECOG of 0, ranging down to an ECOG of 4, which is a patient who's basically totally disabled and unable to do anything on their own. And I hope it's not making too much of a leap of faith to say that obviously the treatment, the ability to tolerate treatment of those two people, same age, same smoking status, everything else, is very different. So that's one thing that we have to think about when I think about who. The other thing to realize, and this actually gets a little, I'm a medical oncologist, so I don't do surgery and the like, but if a patient if I'm going to refer a patient for surgery, other things come into mind. So there may be additional tests that we need to perform. So you may have had PFTs, you may have heard of PFTs, or pulmonary function tests. We love these abbreviations, right? And that's basically the test the capacity of the lungs now, and sometimes we'll say, see what happens after we give a bronchodilator, an inhaler, a puffer, and also to sort of predict perhaps the capacity that they might have after surgery. So if we're going to take out the right upper lobe, for example, that's say half of the right lung approximately, and maybe a quarter of your total lung volume in theory. So what's going to happen? And there's sometimes pulmonary function tests and other more specialized tests that we'll do to predict that. For patients who are well and have a good ECOG performance status, that's usually not too great a concern, but we always obviously would rather know beforehand as opposed to afterwards. Doing surgery and this is not, so a thoracotomy, as Tracy showed you, that scar across the right chest, That's not a trivial surgery, and most patients spend between 4 to 6 days in the hospital, sometimes longer, occasionally shorter. It's a big deal, and it's not. I don't want to overstress it. It's not like whatever, but we want to make sure that your heart's up to the stress of anesthesia and recovering. We always like to encourage our patients to stop smoking, in part because it's good for you and it's good for the family members around you, but also because it may help you tolerate treatment better. And there's real good data for surgery, also for radiation, and I think there's data that actually a friend of mine and I developed with through an NCCN database that suggests also for chemotherapy, patients that don't smoke do better. Sometimes we'll do pulmonary rehabilitation, same kind of thing as cardiac rehab after patients have had heart attack.